The High Council chamber of Xylaris was quiet, but the silence was heavy. Tall, shimmering figures sat in their ornate chairs, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The walls were decorated with ancient symbols, and holographic displays floated in the air, showing images of distant stars and unknown planets. Yet none of that mattered now. All attention was on the small, shaking figure in the center of the room. It was an alien child, no taller than a human toddler, with translucent skin and large, glimmering eyes. It trembled uncontrollably, its tiny fingers curling into fists, and it looked around with fear. The child could not speak, could not explain why it had appeared, or why it was here, far from its home. The council members whispered among themselves, their voices low but tense. "This is not natural," said one counselor, his voice cold. "No child should appear like this on our world. There is danger here, I can feel it. We cannot allow it to stay." Another counselor shook his head. "Perhaps it is sick. Perhaps it carries a disease. We cannot risk letting it touch anything in the city. We must act quickly." The council chamber became louder as more members spoke at once, each arguing, each pointing out reasons why the child should be contained or studied or even sent away. Fear filled their words. They did not understand the child, and their minds filled with danger. They forgot to see the little life that trembled before them, that needed protection more than anything else. Standing quietly at the back of the room, a human named Elias watched. He had been invited to the council as a visiting engineer and peacekeeper. Humans were rare here, and most of the council had little trust in them. They saw humans as weak, fragile, and emotional. But Elias was not afraid. He did not see danger. He saw fear, confusion, and pain. The child flinched as one counselor moved closer, his long fingers glowing faintly. Elias took a step forward, his boots clicking softly on the polished floor. "It's okay," he said, his voice calm though amplified by the translator. "It is safe here. I won't hurt you." The council stopped arguing and stared. Some of them frowned. Others leaned forward, unsure of what this human was doing. They were used to following protocol, to making decisions based on logic and rules, not emotions. Yet here was a human moving toward the child without hesitation, ignoring fear, ignoring protocol. Elias knelt slowly, careful not to startle the child. The child's large eyes widened, and it shrank slightly, pressing itself against the floor. Elias held out his hand. "I will not hurt you. Come to me if you want." The council remained silent, watching. Some were angry. Some were shocked. None spoke a word. It was unusual for them to remain quiet. They were used to controlling every situation. Now they had nothing to say. The child hesitated. Its small body shook, but the fear in its eyes slowly began to soften. It took a tiny step toward Elias, then another. Elias smiled gently, a warm and reassuring smile that humans often gave. He kept his movements slow, calm, and non-threatening. One counselor whispered to another, "Do you see what it is doing? It is responding to him, like it trusts him." Another counselor's voice was low and almost reluctant. How can a human do this? We have never seen anything like it." Elias finally reached the child and knelt fully. He placed a hand on its tiny shoulder. The child flinched but did not pull away. Elias spoke softly again. "You don't have to be afraid. I am here to help you." The child looked up, its glimmering eyes meeting Elias's human eyes. There was fear still, but also a spark of recognition, a sense that this human would not harm it. Slowly the trembling began to lessen. Small shivers ran through its body, but it no longer shook violently. The council observed quietly, their expressions unreadable. They were used to controlling others, to making decisions with authority. But now they could not control the child's trust. They could not command it to fear or obey. And yet, the human had earned the child's trust with nothing more than patience and calm words. Elias continued to kneel, speaking softly, his voice steady and gentle. "You are safe. Nothing will hurt you here. We will help you." The child finally allowed itself to lean slightly against Elias, seeking warmth and protection. Its trembling slowed further. It did not speak, but its large eyes followed him, watching every motion with growing trust. The council exchanged glances. Some were silent with awe. Some were confused, unsure how a human could achieve something they could not. They had knowledge, power, and authority, but here was a simple act of care, a gentle touch, and the child's fear was melting away. Elias's presence changed the room. The fear that had filled the chamber began to fade. The council realized that this child was not a threat. It was small, fragile, and alone. What it needed was kindness, not judgment. What it needed was protection, not control. The child finally looked directly at the council, then back at Elias as if showing them the way. It did not speak, but the message was clear. Safety, care and understanding mattered more than rules or fear. Elias smiled once more, still kneeling, and the council remained silent. They could only watch. For the first time, they understood that sometimes, strength was not in power or authority, but in courage, compassion and patience. And so, in the grand chamber of the High Council, a human knelt beside a trembling alien child, holding its small hands and calming its fear, while the most powerful beings of Xylaris watched in quiet awe, unsure what to say, but knowing they were witnessing something extraordinary. Elias stayed kneeling beside the child, keeping his voice soft and calm. He did not rush. He knew fear could not be fixed with words alone. The child's small body still trembled slightly, its big eyes darting around the room, scanning the tall council members and the strange glowing walls. The council remained silent, watching carefully. They had seen humans act before, but never like this. Humans were usually thought to be fragile, reckless, and unpredictable. Yet here was Elias, moving slowly, deliberately, and without fear. He did not demand obedience. He did not threaten. He simply offered comfort. "Look at me," Elias said gently. "You are safe here. Nothing will hurt you." The child flinched again, but this time it did not pull away. It stayed in place, glancing at Elias and then back at the floor. Elias extended his hand slowly, palm up, inviting the child to touch him if it wanted. The child hesitated for a long moment, then reached out a tiny trembling hand. The council whispered among themselves. Some were amazed. Others looked uneasy. "It is touching him," one counselor said in a low voice. "Why does it trust a human?" "Humans are strange creatures," another muttered. "They do not seem powerful, yet somehow they affect others without force." Elias kept his hand still. He did not move too quickly. The child's fingers brushed his hand lightly, then withdrew. It repeated this several times, each touch a little braver than the last. Elias smiled softly and nodded, encouraging it. "It's okay," he said. "You can stay with me as long as you need." The child's trembling began to slow. Its breathing became more regular. It still looked nervous, but its small gestures showed trust. Slowly, it allowed Elias to lift its tiny hand into both of his. He held it gently, letting the warmth of his palms reassure the child. The council's silence deepened. They had power, authority, and technology, but none of it could calm the child like this. Humans had something different, something the council had never mastered: patience, empathy, and courage mixed together. Elias hummed a soft melody. It was a tune from Earth, something he had learned as a child. The notes were simple, quiet, and comforting. The child froze at first, then slowly relaxed. Its large eyes blinked, and a faint hint of curiosity replaced fear. One counselor whispered to another, "Do you hear that? It is calming the child." "Yes," the other replied softly. "Humans, they are different. Not stronger, but somehow stronger." Elias continued humming while keeping a steady gaze on the child. He spoke softly again, repeating simple phrases. "You are safe. Nothing will hurt you. You are not alone." The child finally leaned slightly toward him. It pressed its small forehead against Elias's hand, a gesture of trust. The council watched, fascinated. Some were unsure what to think. Some had never seen such a display of simple, quiet bravery. Elias noticed a faint pulse of fear still in the child. He adjusted his position, holding it closer, letting it feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "I will protect you," he whispered. "You do not have to be afraid." The trembling continued, but much slower now. The child's breathing became calm, steady. Elias continued to hum, softly and slowly. The council members exchanged glances. They understood, even if they did not fully know why, that the human's touch and voice were doing what no force, no authority, no command could do, comforting a frightened life. Elias spoke again, this time asking a question in a gentle tone. "Can you show me where it hurts? Can you tell me what scares you?" The child did not speak. Its species did not use words in the same way. Instead, it pointed toward the distant chamber doors. Its gesture was small but urgent. Elias understood. It wanted safety. It wanted protection from something outside. The council murmured, some voices hesitant. "It is pointing, it must be afraid of something," one counselor said quietly. "Yes," another replied. "But it trusts him, the human." Elias nodded. "I see. We will keep you safe," he said, cradling the child slightly. He lifted the child gently, holding it close to his chest. The council watched, unable to move or speak. They were silent because they could not argue with what they were seeing. The human held the child and the child was calm. The child rested its head against Elias, its large eyes closing briefly. The council realized that the human's actions were simple, yet extraordinary. A creature that appeared so fragile had achieved something they could not. He had earned the trust of a frightened life without force, without threat, without a command. For the first time, the council considered that humans might possess a power beyond technology or authority. It was not physical strength. It was not rules or laws. It was courage, patience, and care. It was understanding the needs of another being and acting without hesitation. Elias stayed in that position for several moments, letting the child feel safety, warmth, and trust. The child's trembling nearly stopped. Its small fingers clung to Elias's hands not out of fear but for comfort. Finally Elias whispered once more, "You are safe. We will not let anything harm you." The council remained silent. They watched, knowing they were witnessing something unusual, remarkable, and perhaps even important. A human had knelt before a frightened alien child and, through calm words, steady hands, and a patient heart, had begun to change everything in the chamber. And so, the first touch had been made. A bond had begun. A moment of trust that no law or order could command had been created. The council understood, even if only a little, that humans were not ordinary. They were different, and in that difference lay a strength that could not be measured in power or rank, but in courage and heart. Elias continued holding the child gently, keeping his voice calm and soft. The child no longer trembled as violently, but it still seemed unsure. Its large, glimmering eyes moved quickly, scanning the faces of the council members and the strange, glowing walls. Elias noticed every flicker of fear, every tiny gesture, and he responded patiently, letting the child set the pace. The High Council watched in silence. They were uneasy and fascinated at the same time. For centuries they had ruled with power, knowledge, and strict order. Nothing could easily surprise them. Yet here was a human, small, fragile, and apparently weak, calming a being they had all feared. The counselors whispered quietly to one another, their glowing eyes wide with curiosity. "Why does it trust him?" one whispered. "It is impossible," another replied. "Humans should not be able to influence others like this." But Elias did not notice the whispers. His focus was entirely on the child. He knelt steadily, letting the little alien rest against his chest. His hands were warm and firm, giving reassurance without pressure. He spoke softly. "Can you show me what scares you? Can you tell me what you need?" The child hesitated. Its species did not use words the same way humans did. Instead, it pointed with a small trembling finger toward the large doors of the chamber. Its gestures were subtle, yet full of meaning. Elias understood. The child was pointing to danger outside, something threatening its life. Elias's face grew serious, but his voice remained calm. "I understand. You are telling me there is danger. We will keep you safe." He stroked the child's back gently, letting it feel steady and secure. The child leaned into him slightly, as if confirming that it believed his words. The council exchanged glances. Some were amazed. Some were uncomfortable. "It communicates without speaking," one said softly. "The human understands it. How is this possible?" Elias tilted his head slightly, encouraging the child to continue. "Show me what I need to know," he said gently. "I will listen." The child's small hands moved quickly, pointing again toward the chamber doors and then toward the distant city streets outside. Its gestures were urgent. Elias nodded, following each motion carefully. The child wanted to warn the council of something. It wanted them to see what danger lay outside. He turned to the council. "It is not here to harm us. It is running from danger. We cannot judge it by fear. We must help it." The council remained silent, their voices caught in awe and uncertainty. They had power, technology, and authority, but none of that could achieve what the human had just done. He had understood the child without words, without rules, and without force. He had used patience and empathy to create a connection stronger than fear. Elias lifted the child slightly, cradling it in his arms. Its trembling nearly stopped. It rested its head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. The council watched, still unsure of what to do. Some felt admiration. Others felt confusion. None of them could deny what they were seeing. The child made a small movement, pointing again, then touching Elias's chest lightly. Elias understood that the child was showing trust, indicating that it wanted him to guide the council. He nodded and spoke softly. "Yes, we will follow your lead. You are safe with us." The council murmured quietly. One counselor said, "The human, He understands without needing words. This is strange and impressive. Elias continued to kneel, listening to the child's gestures and subtle movements. Every twitch, every glance, every tiny sign meant something. He responded gently, reassuringly, letting the child feel safe. The child's body relaxed further, and its fear began to fade completely. "See," Elias said quietly to the council, "it is not dangerous. It is frightened. And it is asking for help. We cannot ignore it. Fear is not always the truth." The child moved slightly, pointing toward a nearby window. Elias looked and saw a faint shimmer in the sky. There were signs of movement, something approaching from far away. The child species had been fleeing, and now Elias understood that danger was real. But the child did not panic because it trusted him. He turned again to the council. "We have a chance to protect it," he said. "We can act, but we must remain calm. We cannot scare it again." The council looked at him silently. They had never seen a human act with such calm certainty. They were used to panic or strict orders. Yet here was Elias, small and unarmed, ready to guide them through danger with nothing but understanding and patience. The child nestled closer against Elias. Its trembling had stopped almost entirely. It was listening, trusting, and relying on the human to make sense of the world around it. The council finally realized the lesson they had been witnessing. Strength was not always in power or authority. Sometimes it was in empathy, courage, and understanding. Elias looked down at the child, speaking softly. "We will protect you. Nothing will harm you while I am here. Trust me." The child blinked slowly, and for the first time, a faint sense of relief crossed its eyes. The council could see it. They had been trained to see danger in every movement, every gesture. But now they saw hope, peace, and trust. Elias held the child close, feeling its small hands clutch his clothing lightly. He did not speak loudly. He did not force it. He simply stayed present, steady, and patient. The child responded naturally, understanding that it had a protector, and for the first time, it allowed itself to relax completely. The council remained silent, their eyes wide with wonder. They had witnessed a human communicate and connect in a way that no alien technology or authority could achieve. A small, trembling child had been calmed, not by power but by courage, empathy, and understanding. And in that moment, the High Council of Xylaris realized something extraordinary. Humans were not strong in the ways they expected. They were not powerful in the ways they measured. But they had a strength of heart, a gift of empathy, and a courage that could change lives. A human had understood what words could not explain, and had turned fear into trust. Elias kept the child safe in his arms, while the council watched in awe, silent and thoughtful. For the first time, they truly understood that there was more to strength than rules, technology, or authority. There was compassion. There was courage. And sometimes, that was the most powerful force of all. Elias continued holding the child close. Its small body had stopped trembling completely now, and its large, glimmering eyes watched him with trust. The High Council remained silent, still in awe of what the human had achieved. For the first time, the council realized that there was more to humans than their size or fragile appearance. There was courage, patience, and empathy that even the most powerful among them had never mastered. Suddenly, a loud alarm echoed through the chamber. Red lights flashed along the walls. The council members stiffened, their glowing eyes narrowing. Outside, the sensors showed movement, something large, fast, and hostile approaching the city. "What is happening?" one counselor demanded, rising from his chair. "We are under attack." Another counselor leaned over a floating display. "The sensors confirm it. A fleet of unknown ships is approaching. They are fast and they are armed. Their trajectory matches the child's origin. They are here for it." Panic began to spread among the council members. They shouted over one another, debating what to do. Some wanted to hide the child. Some wanted to prepare defenses. Others suggested abandoning the city entirely. Their fear was palpable, but it was also chaotic. None of them could agree. Elias stayed calm, holding the child carefully against his chest. He could feel its small heartbeat, fast but steady. He whispered softly to it, "Don't be afraid. I will keep you safe. We will get through this." The child clung to him, its small hands gripping his clothing. Its eyes darted toward the holographic displays, then back at Elias. It did not need words. He understood. Danger was coming and it was serious, but it had faith in him. Elias turned to the council. "Stop arguing," he said firmly, his voice calm but commanding. "Panic will not help. We can face this together if we act wisely. The child is not a threat. The enemy is outside. We must protect it first. The council fell silent, surprised by the humans' authority. They had power and technology, but they were unprepared for how decisive and calm Elias was. They realized that humans could act under pressure in ways they could not. Elias scanned the chamber. We have an evacuation route. It is hidden, secure, and fast. We can move the child there without risking it. The rest of the city will follow once the child is safe. A counselor spoke hesitantly, but it is dangerous. The attackers are strong. They will destroy anything in their path. Elias nodded. I understand. But we cannot rush blindly. If we panic, we will lose the child. If we act with care, we can guide everyone safely. Watch and follow my lead. He carefully lifted the child fully into his arms, cradling it against his chest. The child relaxed completely, trusting him entirely. Its trembling was gone, replaced by calm and focus. Elias's calm presence gave the child courage, and it responded naturally. The council members had never seen anything like it. They were trained to control situations with authority and orders, but here was a human leading without force, inspiring trust with nothing more than calm confidence and empathy. Elias led the way to the hidden evacuation route. It was narrow and winding, built centuries ago as a secret escape for important council members. He moved carefully but quickly, adjusting his steps so the child remained secure. The council and guards followed behind, their movements cautious but coordinated under his direction. Outside, the enemy ships approached rapidly. They were sleek, fast, and armed with strange weapons that shimmered in alien light. The council's sensors indicated their speed and power, and for a moment fear threatened to overwhelm them again. But Elias did not panic. He focused only on the child and the path ahead. This way, he whispered. Stay close. Move quietly. Do not panic. The child pressed against him, its small body warm and trusting. It looked at him and Elias smiled reassuringly. The council could see the connection. They realized that the child's trust in the human was absolute. It believed he could keep it safe. As they moved through the evacuation tunnel, the council began to follow his lead more confidently. They adjusted their steps, coordinating silently, trusting his judgment. Some whispered to each other in disbelief. How does he do this? He is calm and the child trusts him completely. Elias continued guiding them. Every turn, every step, was careful but fast enough to stay ahead of danger. He checked the child frequently, making sure it felt safe. Its small hands clung to him, but its eyes were no longer fearful, they were alert and calm. Finally, they reached the hidden sanctuary, a secure chamber designed to protect those who could not defend themselves. Elias placed the child gently on a soft platform, letting it settle. The child looked up at him, blinking slowly. It trusted him entirely. The council stood outside the sanctuary watching. They had followed his lead, yet it was clear who had kept them all safe. They realized that the human had done something extraordinary. He had led them calmly, acted decisively, and protected the vulnerable when they were frozen with fear. Elias knelt beside the child, speaking softly. You are safe now. Nothing will harm you here. I promise. The child leaned into him slightly, pressing its small head against his shoulder. It no longer trembled. The danger outside was real, but it trusted him completely. The council could not speak. They were silent because they understood something new. Humans were not strong in the ways they had thought. They were not powerful like the council, and they were not armed with technology beyond reach. Yet they had a different kind of strength born from calmness, courage, and empathy. Elias remained kneeling, holding the child gently. He did not boast. He did not demand recognition. He simply stayed with the child, letting it feel safe. The council watched quietly, learning that sometimes the most powerful actions were not made with weapons or authority, but with courage, patience, and care. And in that moment, the High Council understood that humans were extraordinary. They had a gift that could save lives in ways the council had never imagined. A human had held a small, frightened child, and through calm, empathy, and bravery, had protected it from danger that even the most powerful aliens could not face alone. The hidden threat still loomed outside, but inside the sanctuary the child was safe, and the council understood that sometimes, the smallest acts of courage could be the strongest of all. The sanctuary was quiet. The alarms outside still echoed faintly, and distant flashes of light from the approaching enemy ships shimmered against the walls, but inside the child was safe. It sat on a soft platform looking up at Elias with wide, trusting eyes. For the first time since arriving, it felt calm, protected, and understood. Elias knelt beside the child, speaking in a soft, steady voice. Nothing will hurt you here. You are safe now. The child pressed its tiny hands against his, as if confirming the words with its touch. Elias smiled gently, feeling the warmth of the little life against him. Outside the sanctuary, the High Council watched in silence. Their glowing eyes reflected the soft lights of the chamber. They had followed Elias here, and they could not deny what they had seen. A human had guided them, calmed a frightened alien child, and acted decisively when they themselves had been paralyzed by fear. One counselor whispered to another, his voice filled with awe. We have power, knowledge, and weapons, yet he moved with a calm we cannot match. He saved the child. Another counselor nodded slowly. He did not need authority or command. He simply acted, with heart. That is something we lack. Elias turned to the council, his face serious but calm. You have the power to protect your city and your people. But never forget this: courage is not always about weapons or force. Sometimes, it is about patience, understanding, and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The council absorbed his words silently. They had ruled for centuries, and yet they realized they had never truly understood what strength could be. They measured it with technology, laws, and control, but Elias had shown them a new kind of strength, human strength. The child, now completely relaxed, leaned against Elias. It did not speak, but it communicated everything through its small movements: trust, comfort, and even a quiet sense of gratitude. Elias gently lifted it slightly, cradling it against his chest. The child's large eyes looked up at him, and for a moment, it almost seemed to smile. Elias spoke softly. You are safe. No one will harm you while I am here. You are not alone anymore. The council remained silent, but some members exchanged glances filled with admiration. They realized that the child's trust was absolute, and that the human had earned it with nothing but patience, care, and courage. Outside, the enemy fleet approached closer, but the sanctuary's shields held. The council realized that they could have prepared their defenses with fear and orders, but it would not have calmed the child or ensured its safety. Elias had acted differently. He had led not with authority but with empathy, and that had made all the difference. One counselor finally spoke aloud. Perhaps we have judged humans too quickly. They are not weak. They are extraordinary. Elias nodded slightly but did not respond. His focus remained on the child. He knew that words were not enough to explain the bond that had formed. Actions spoke louder than any declaration, and his actions had earned the child's trust. The child's small fingers curled around his clothing, pressing close to him. It seemed to understand that it had been rescued not by force but by care. Elias gently patted its back and whispered, You are safe now. I will not let anything harm you. The council watched quietly, understanding that this was not a lesson in power, but in courage, patience, and empathy. Humans, though fragile in appearance, carried a force that no authority or weapon could replicate. They acted with heart, and sometimes that was stronger than any army. As the distant lights of the enemy ships glimmered against the chamber walls, Elias looked down at the child and smiled softly. He had seen fear, but he had also seen trust form where it seemed impossible. He had held a life that others saw as fragile, and through care and courage he had changed its fate. The child blinked slowly, leaning into him completely. It no longer trembled. Its small body relaxed fully, and its eyes shone with quiet relief. Elias had done more than protect it. He had given it hope. The council began to speak, their voices low but respectful. We underestimated humans, one said. Their strength is not in their weapons but in their hearts. Another added, a single human has shown what centuries of authority cannot teach. Patience, courage, and empathy can change lives. Elias nodded slightly again, understanding their words without needing to respond. His actions had spoken for him. The child was safe. The council had learned an important lesson. Humanity was different, special, and extraordinary in ways they had never realized. He stood carefully, keeping the child secure in his arms. The child did not resist. It trusted him completely. Elias turned to the council and gestured toward the sanctuary's door. This child has a future. We will protect it together. But remember, the strength to act with care and courage is not limited to humans, it is in all who choose it. The council watched in silence, finally understanding. They had seen fear, danger, and uncertainty. They had seen the small child trembling with terror. And yet, a human had changed everything. He had held the child, calmed it, and guided them through crisis, not with force, not with orders, but with heart. The child rested against Elias's shoulder, its trust complete. The High Council realized that they would never forget this moment. They had witnessed something extraordinary, the mark of a human, quiet yet powerful, gentle yet courageous. A single life had been saved, and a lesson had been taught that would endure for generations. Elias stood, the child safe in his arms, as the council watched without a word. No speech could capture what had happened. No authority could replicate it. The child's trust, the human's courage, and the council's awe told the story better than any words ever could. And so, in the sanctuary, while distant dangers still approached, a human had left his mark. He had shown that courage was not only in weapons or orders, but in empathy, in patience, and in the quiet act of holding a frightened child and refusing to let go. That was the power of humanity, and that was the moment the council would never forget.